Yeah.
Maybe just have like a little point that points outward as well.
That's what I'm doing. That's what I'm gonna do.
Alright guys, we're gonna go over the cast shadow of the cube and the pole. We'll do the other shapes later. Packet number 1 is the guided one. Packet number 2 is the independent one, the one that you have to turn in. And you also have to shade the shape as well. Okay, so you're gonna shade the shadow, the actual shadow, plus the shape. And I'll show you an example so that you get an idea, and you can start by doing this one for homework, these two, on page 2. So these are the ones that we're gonna do together. So this line represents the lamp, the floor lamp per se, or the light source. The top of the line, let's label it light source, and the bottom is the ground pivot point. Okay, and again, think of it as a floor lamp. If I make this line longer, then I'm bringing the lamp closer to me, closer to the viewer. Okay, the way I have it, I'm the viewer, me, I'm number 1. Look at the cylinder. The cylinder is in position number 2, or the cube as well if you group them. And then the light source or the floor lamp is in position number 3. Okay, so by making this line longer or shorter, you're either sending it to the back, if I make it shorter, like really short, and if I make it longer, I'm bringing it to the front, to the foreground. Okay, that's what this line is about. We'll go over some pages from your ebook later to explain the different types of situations if you're dealing with the sun as the light source. It's a little bit different than with the floor lamp. It's similar in some ways and a little bit different in other ways, depending on where the sun is. If the sun is in the background, it's pretty similar if you put the ground pivot point right on the horizon, just like the video that I asked you to see, remember? That's when the sun is in the background. But if the sun is behind the viewer, or on the right, or on the left, it changes the steps. But I'll go over that later. I'll refer you to your ebook. I believe those are the pages that I asked you to read, so hopefully you should already have an idea. If not, please refer to those pages. Okay, so now, just as a review, we already did the pole last time. The bottom of the pole connects to the ground pivot point, and we draw a line from the ground pivot point to the bottom of the pole, and we go past it. Try to guess the length of that shadow, make it a little bit longer. And then the top connects to the light source. You keep going after the pole until the two lines intersect. Okay? And then any remaining line after the intersection you erase. So from here to here, that's the actual cast shadow of the pole. As simple as that. Okay, so connecting with the ground pivot point determines the angle of that shadow, where that shadow is pointing. And connecting with the light source determines the length of that shadow. Okay, remember that from last class? Okay, so this super simple concept, we're gonna be repeating it in the rest of the shapes. We're gonna bring the pole to each of the shapes many times so that we can find those triangles. Remember when I show you the shapes in real life and I was pointing the light and I show you I had actually cut out triangles that come out of each of the edges. Okay, so that's what we want to find. We want to create those triangles, and using this simple concept will help us do that. Okay, so let's move on to the cube. Let's look at this edge. We're going to begin with this edge closer to the viewer. Okay, it doesn't matter which edge you begin with, but let's just begin with this one. And we're going to do the same. If you ignore all of the lines and just focus on that line, okay, as if it was another pole, okay, it becomes a super simple exercise. Okay, because it's going to get a little bit confusing once we have all the triangles, all of the lines. It may get a little bit tricky. That's why I do this fairly guided. Even the other one, I'll show you an example of the end result, the packet number 2. But let's focus on this line as if nothing else existed. This is just a pole. And we do the same. The bottom with the ground pivot point. So you keep going. Actually, I'll do it with yellow so that it stays. Try to guess how long it would be. And then the top with the light source. And then you keep going after the pole or edge until they intersect. Right here. So we have intersection number 1 right there for triangle number 1. Questions so far? Okay. I'm going to switch colors now. Now I'm going to do the edge on this side. Again, ignore everything and think of that line as another pole. Okay, so we're going to create the corresponding triangle for this particular line. So we do exactly the same. The bottom, since the bottom is touching the ground, then it connects with the ground pivot point. And the top with the light source. Top, and draw a line all the way from the light, go past until it intersects with the ground line right here. Intersection number 2, triangle number 2. Now I'm gonna switch colors, and I'm going to do the edge on the back. Okay, it's very faint. Can you see it? I made it dotted. It's right here. Okay, so similar story. I'm gonna ignore everything except for that dotted faint line. I'm gonna treat it like a pole. So the bottom of this dotted line connects with the ground pivot point. You keep going, go past it. Try to guess, make it longer than your estimation. And then, same line, the top, with the light source. So, you draw your line. All the way, you keep going until it intersects with its corresponding line, red with red. Okay, and we have right here intersection number 3. Okay, triangle number 3 right here on the other side. Most of the triangle is covered by the actual cube. Only this portion is showing, but that's okay. Once you have your 3 intersections, you're gonna connect 1 with 2, 2 with 3. And then a portion, or not a portion, actually the bottom, the base of triangle number 1 is part of the shadow, and the base of triangle number 3 is the other side of the shadow. Are you okay, Sarah? Karthik? I can hear your voice all the way here, so please keep it down because I cannot focus when I hear voices. I'm sorry. Okay, not right here because it's being blocked by the actual shape. Okay, so this would be your actual shadow. Remember I showed you last time in real life the funny shape that it creates? So then you would shade it, whether you want to make a flat color all throughout, or starts very dark and then it fades, but you would stay within these boundaries. Okay, you wouldn't go past them, and you also do not want to have a solid line surrounding the shadow. For this exercise, it's fine because we need it as our notes. Actually, we want to be able to see all the guidelines. Okay, so we would see that line. But in reality, shadows do not have an outline. Okay, it's either a solid black all throughout or a solid dark color, or blurry edges. Your blurry edges would be along the lines. Okay, questions so far? Two very important things to remember. One is, as you might have already realized, I ignore this edge. Poor little edge got ignored. Let me tell you why. If I end up doing that edge, the line would be somewhere here, and then The other line would be somewhere here. Its triangle would be inside of the shape, inside of the cast shadow. So pretty much you're working, doing extra work for nothing. You're just wasting your time. But when in doubt, you can do all four, and then you'll see, oh, I did that one for nothing. Just wasted my time. But that's okay. It's good practice. As a general rule, the edge closer to the light source is the one that you can ignore. Okay? And then the remaining three are the ones that you would be doing, because the shadow is always on opposite side of this. So those are the ones that are actually forming the shadow for you. Okay? So that's one important thing to remember. You're only going to do 3 edges, ignoring the one closer to the light. But when in doubt, do all 4 and you should be good. You'll see which triangle is useless. The other important thing to remember, and this is going to be on the test, okay, is not to confuse intersections. On your paper, the lines appear to overlap. That's why I'm color coding everything. Right here, this appears to be an intersection. It is not. Okay? Some people confuse this for an intersection and they end up shading this portion, this extra portion. It is not an intersection. Can somebody tell me why that is not an intersection?
It's not from the same color.
It's not the same color. They don't belong together, no matter how much they try to keep their relationship going. No, I'm just kidding. No. No. This line is a little bit further back. This line is actually a portion of a line that you should have erased. I did it on purpose. Okay? This line belongs to triangle number 3, or it's an extension of triangle number 3 that shouldn't even be there in the first place. Whereas this line is up in the air, a little bit closer to the viewer. So in real life, if we were to make the triangles, they wouldn't even be touching each other. Okay? Let's say you're drawing, or in real life, I'm sorry, not drawing. If you're connecting real strings from the top of the light all the way to the ground, like if you're setting up a tent or something and you have these lines going on, the strings, in real life, this string would not be touching this line because this is the ground and this is up in the air. Okay? But it gets easily confused. Even on the test, you might end up with something like this. So remember, look at all of your triangles. See how they form. So do not confuse intersections. Erase. Okay? So that you don't end up with this mistake. Erase before you do anything. Once you have your triangle, erase any extra lines. Questions? Okay. So that's the only shape that we're gonna go over today. This would be your independent work. Notice how I moved the light source a little bit. I pushed it to the right just a little bit. By the way, in your copies, there's a weird line. All those copying machines are always acting up. So ignore this line, ignore this line. This is the light source. Okay, so make sure you label it correctly so that you don't confuse the other lines. Now, I moved the shapes like I already said. Okay, Well, just focus on this one and this one. This would be your pole, pretty similar to what we did, a little bit more angled. But I moved the cube under the light source. So see how the shadow changes completely? In this one it's pointing to the lower right. In this one is sort of center, pointing down. Okay? So it's gonna change. You're gonna have some very skinny triangles, but this is pretty much how it's gonna look like. Okay? And then I want you to shade it accordingly. If the light is here, then this would be the darkest. This would be your medium tone, and this would be the lightest. You can just leave it white or make a very light gray. Okay? If you want to do that now, it's 4:48. It's a little bit late. You might be tired by now. We covered so many things today, so I appreciate your hard work. I really do. If you feel like you can try working on this shape right now in the pole, you can do so, or you can do it for homework. Just remember how this is supposed to look like, okay? It's no longer pointing to the right, it's pointing down.
And we just need the cube and the pole?
Yeah, just the
cylinder?
cube and the pole, not the cylinder. Yeah. That's all you need.